Hello, I'm Edward Thompson. Welcome to today's episode of Pictures on My Mind. And today's episode, I'm going to talk about two very different cameras that are very similar cameras, and that is my very trusted Super Ikonta. I always thought it was from 1955, but it turns out it's actually from I think 1951 to 1954 it was produced. I bought it in a second-hand camera shop in Folkestone for £90 in 2001. And yeah, it's been on many an adventure with me. And I got it because I absolutely adored the work of Diane Arbus. And I really wanted to shoot square format. And I know she had a twin lens camera. And I know the other kids at uni had Hasselblads, but there's no way I could afford either. And I saw this camera in a camera shop in Folkestone. And yeah, if you saw that in a camera shop, would you immediately think it was a medium format camera? The only reason I did know what it was a few nights before I was hanging out with a friend who was a keyboard player in a goth band called Einsteifen, and he had a very similar little folding rangefinder camera, and that's how I knew what it was. And yeah, I bought it for £90, and I was just ecstatic to be able to shoot square format and get 12 shots on a roll on this camera. The downside was both the rangefinder distance measurer, so you can basically focus the camera, is uncoupled. That means when you look through it and you're moving your little rangefinder to focus the distance, it's so impossible. I've got to say, right, I can barely see through it. Isn't that crazy? Gosh, it's because it's so dark in here. Damn. I need to give a bit of wipe. Give a bit of a wipe. Let's have a little look again. No, it's almost, I've got to say, it's almost impossible to look through. The viewfinder is not much better, and again with the viewfinder it's a bit like a twin lens, is that what you're looking at is not exactly what you're photographing, because the viewfinder for the rangefinder is above the lens and it's not actually going through the lens. So if you look through the viewfinder you can actually see the top of the lens in shot. You basically have to frame this camera a bit lower down, otherwise you're chopping everyone's heads off, okay? So that's an important lesson. Even with all those problems, it's still an incredible camera, and I did some amazing work with it. And the way I got around the fact that you could barely see through the rangefinder focus, and basically that's what this is. So you'd look through it and you'd turn this dial, and there's a very faint image you'd see kind of moving around in this viewfinder. And then once you've got your distance set, say it was 7 foot, you then mark it 7 foot on the lens. So again, it's not coupled. That means you read the distance and you have to do it. And again, truth be told, no real rangefinder photographer worth their salt messes around with that stuff. When I started using this camera a lot more, I got very good at guessing distances. So I could guess it was like 5 foot from me to the camera now, or I could guess it was 12 foot or whatever. So what you'd do is you just you could then sort of adjust it as you were shooting, but forget all that. I mean, they were so clever in the 50s that what they did, if you look here carefully, you can see like a red dot just between 24 feet and 48 feet, and there's a little red dot between f8 and f11. And the idea of that was if you had your camera set to that, you would focus on anything from 15 feet to infinity. So as long as you could be shooting about f9, you didn't even have to worry about focusing. And obviously this is a trick people use with zoning and rangefinders. You can Google other videos to see all about that. But long and the short of it, let's say, you know about depths of field. Let's say you're shooting on f8, and that's a reasonably generous depth of field considering what you might be shooting on. You could set it to say 9 feet or 12 feet, and you'd know within that range you'd have everything would be in focus because of the depth of field you're given by shooting on f8. Speaking of depth of field, the most open aperture you can shoot on this camera is f3.5, and the smallest aperture you can shoot is f22. Yeah, I loved it. I love this little camera. It had some amazing little qualities as well, in that it was a mechanical shutter. What was meant by that is there were no batteries. There's literally no batteries in it. When you wound it on and you cock the shutter, a bit like, say, a large format camera, when you cock that little shutter, it set you up, you were good to go. So even if your batteries would never run out, you'd always be fine. The one downside to this I found was I was trying to photograph with this camera in Lapland at minus 42 degrees and the camera actually froze. But to be fair, I didn't have any other cameras with me, and probably in minus 42 degrees, probably other cameras would have messed up as well. But yeah, it's been a bulletproof little beast. Bit punk rock, but yeah, at some point I had a hole in the bellows and I was getting light leak, so I just shoved a bit of duct tape on there, and it's still good. But yeah, what else? Oh yeah, how did I miss this? The coolest thing ever, the lens flopping out. Look at that. Look at that. Look at it. What's not to like? We'll do it again. So, you know, not only is it cool because it's kind of compact and it folds away and it keeps the lens safe, you could even put it in your nice kind of 90s style baggy fit retro jeans back pocket, but you can pretend to be Sex Machine from Dusk Till Dawn. There we go, so one for the vamps. Check them out, I'll do it again for the vamps. There we go. What else? That's about it really. It's relatively simple. You know, if you want to put it on a tripod you could, not that I ever did. The one thing I did actually use this mount for was I used to do this wacky thing where I used to photograph this camera with a Metz flash. Now, I don't know if you know a Metz flash, but I'll film a bit in a minute, but it's basically like a very large hammerhead flash that's massive. So I'd have this massive flash and this tiny camera, and I got some pretty good results. And I think the funniest thing is that the best photo I've ever taken in my life was on this camera in 2002. I've never showed it to anyone. Well, maybe a couple of people, but I've never published it, I've never put it out there. I've been waiting for a day when the Guardian would come and ask me for my best photograph. And it's been, what, like 21 years, and it still hasn't happened. But one day you might see it. It's my Dorian Gray. So yeah, so there you go. So look at that, right? Quality from 1951, from 1954. It's an Ikonta M. And the thing is that, you know, in photography, you're going to be told time and time again by photographers, especially on YouTube videos, who are waving Leicas at you, how important the camera is. And the thing is that some of the best photographs I've taken in my life have been made with that rangefinder camera. And that's obviously pretty wild, but it's true. The photographs from that camera were in National Geographic Magazine. They won a Sony World Photo Award. They were in my book, In a Garden to England. It's been amazing work, and what I'll do is I'll talk about the Fuji GF670 next, and then at the end of that I'll compare some high-res scans I've got from photographs taken with each camera. But yeah, an amazing piece of kit, and as I said, I picked up for £90. I'm not sure how much you could pick one up for now, but it's the kind of camera that you'll see hipsters will have in their homes, and they'll just have it sat on a shelf getting dusty, because they'll just have it as a piece of art. Well, the thing is, guys, these cameras are freaking amazing, and don't just let it sit around gathering dust, use it. Yeah, the rangefinder is a bit tricky to look through, but if you get used to guessing distances, or use that trick, that little zone trick where you just sort of set the camera up to shoot to infinity and whatever, just go for it. You'll be pleasantly surprised. Okay, the next one. What's the story behind this camera? Well, I'll tell you. So I knew I was gonna be a dad with twins on the way, and I've got some medium format cameras like my Bronica or the Mamiya that are quite big and bulky, and I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to carry those around, so I had a brainwave to buy this Fuji GF670, which is a folding lens camera, much like the Ikonta. Look at that beast. So yeah, sort of similar looking kind of to a plough bell, a Makina plough bell, but the thing that it's got on a plough bell, and the thing that I really love, was that it's not just 6x6 square format, it's 6x7 as well. That's right. It's two formats in one camera, which is just amazing. Because yeah, as much as I love square format and shooting square, there are certain points, let's say with a landscape series, you're going to want to have that rectangle, man. People like landscapes as rectangles, yeah? And sometimes some composition, some portrait series, you might want to shoot 6.7. So yeah, wonderful piece of kit. Again, with the folding lens, one thing to watch out for, when you're using the rangefinder, what can happen is that you can see here that the lens is sticking out, and you've got to be really careful. You do not want to shut that camera with the lens sticking out, so you need to put it back to infinity. There's a little button here to press to then fold the lens away, and you know, again, nice action, right? Again, you know, boom, look at that. You know, very cool, and ultimately a grower, not a shower. So there you go, very handy to have. What else? So that's for winding your film on. Here you go. So you got your shutter speed. So from bulb, 4 seconds, 2 seconds, all the way around to a 500th of a second. The view count finder is at the top here. I forgot to mention on the back, the one downside with these old cameras, these old Ikontas, is when you wind it on, you got to kind of match up the numbers. But the cool thing is, man, camera companies still make film with the numbers on the back of each shot. So if I don't know if you can see it in that very dark red window, but there's number 11, which means I'm on shot 11. So it's filming this camera right now. But that was quite a cool little thing, wasn't it? Anyway, obviously very different to the Fuji. You've basically got a counter here on top. I don't have film in this camera, so I can show you on the inside. So the big difference, and you notice on the back of both these cameras, is this has the viewfinder for composition and it has the rangefinder. And you'd have to look through the rangefinder, see the distance, and then manually change that on the lens. So yeah, the big difference then is this has a coupled rangefinder. And essentially, if I'm looking through it and I'm just rotating this little focus tool at the front, I can see a ghost image overlaying for my focus, and it's doing it automatically. So there's no sort of second guessing, oh, I've got to do the distance, I've got to do whatever. But you know, the same trick applies where you can, you know, set your camera to say, you know, f8. You can stick it on, what would it be on this one? This is actually set to meters, not feet. You could set it on like, I think 3.5, 4 meters on f8 or f9. And yeah, you're kind of rolling, man. You kind of got a nice sort of point where it's like a, you know, shooting gallery, basically anything between that sort of 12-foot to infinity distance is in focus, so you don't even have to worry about focusing. Pretty handy. Aperture on this camera, again, interestingly, it's exactly the same. It's the same as the Super Ikonta. It goes from f3.5 all the way to f22. So although there's like 50 years difference between these cameras, the apertures are the same. It's kind of nice. Not much else to report apart from that. The coupled viewfinder. Oh yeah, other big thing, obviously, light meter. This little bad boy has no light meter in. This one has a built-in light meter, and funnily enough, for those people who like it, there's a little automatic mode, aperture priority. So let's say you set your aperture to f5.6, there we go, and I'm looking through it, and it would automatically tell me that in this low light in my cellar, I need to be shooting on 1/8 of a second, okay? Or rather, it's made the camera shoot to 1/8 of a second because it's done it automatically. That's kind of handy, but obviously you don't want to be shooting at 1/8 of a second. It's going to be really slow, but it's nice that it has that functionality. Now, one thing that's been cool is I have obviously played around with both cameras and I have shot it a fair bit, but not half as much as I shot that Ikonta. It turns out when you have twins, you don't have much time to run around photographing when you've got twins everywhere. So yeah, so didn't use it as much, and I'm sure if I'd used it more, I'd have got much better kind of working with the camera. Let's pop this bad boy open. So to open it, there's this little catch here on the side. And yeah, here's the coveted thing. So you see that little dial here? That dial says 6x6 or 6x7. And all you need to do, I'm not sure if I quite do it with my nail. Do I have a coin? What happens is I will get something. I'm going to get something. I'm not going to be defeated by this. Here we go. There we go. Good. Screwdriver in the cellar, wouldn't you know? So yeah, if I just twist this dial here, you see that? So that's 6x7, that's 6x6. Let's do it a bit better. There you go, 6x7, 6x6, 6x7, 6x6. It's pretty cool, huh? And that's it, that's all you need to do. And the thing is though, is that once you're shooting, that's it. The roll that you've put in, say set to 6x6, you've got to shoot the whole roll. There's no like, I'll do 2 frames 6.6, now I'll do 6.7, you have to shoot the whole thing. But yeah. Now, obviously, remarkably, these two cameras, separated by essentially 50 years, have some similarities. They have the apertures from 3.5 to 22. Obviously, both have the folding lenses, both shooting medium format 6.6, but also the Fuji has the ability to shoot 6.7. The Fuji has the coupled rangefinder. The Ikonta doesn't. The Fuji has like obviously ability to kind of focus and you can actually see what's going on. The Ikonta kind of doesn't. But you know, right now on eBay in the UK, there's the Fuji GF670 being sold for $2,775. I'm actually going to sell this camera soon myself, and I'm going to sell it for $2,400. This little guy I picked up for £90. All right, and yet in my career defining photos were made with the £90 camera, not the expensive camera. And that's it. That's one of the big truths of photography. Photography is not about your camera. And the weirdest thing is that, especially on YouTube, you just see video after video and it's some guy holding up like the expensive camera and then they're walking around with the expensive camera. And obviously there's sort of, I think I've worked out what the reason for it is. A few reasons. Number one, it kind of looks cool because we're in this weird kind of celebrity prestige era, and it's kind of boastful. It's like the person sat around in the sports car that you really want to have. So there's that kind of desire, yeah. Also, tough one for the amateurs here. You might be telling yourself that the reason you're not a very good photographer is because you need a better camera. Again, sorry to be the bearer of bad news. That's not true. You can become a better photographer with your camera phone if you wanted to. Okay, it's just about putting in the time, practice, training, all that stuff. But again, hard truth. And the third reason might be it's sponsored. Like they're being paid to show off that camera. Maybe the camera company's given them a camera. And again, it's a bit of a game, really. So just, yeah, be careful. So as I said, 2 cameras here, separated by 50 years, one like, I don't know, 20 times the price. And yet, pound for pound, when you see the results, and I'll flash up some scans in a minute, you'll see just how impressive the 1950s Super Ikonta is versus the Fuji GF670, or I'd say any medium format camera. Don't tell yourself you need the new camera. Don't tell yourself you need the expensive camera. Whatever you've got, just practice, just work it, and it will help you to create like your own style. Even if it's a crap camera, even if it's a rangefinder you can barely focus with, if you really need to, you're going to find a way of making it work. And I think that is the true magic of photography, right? Because let's face it, man, if we're all shooting the same camera in the same way, it'd be a pretty boring world of photography. So yeah, find a camera that you kind of like and just keep using it. Stay with it, stick with it. If you do want to buy the Fuji GF670, I will be selling it collection only in Kent or London. But yeah, the reason is I'm going to buy a film camera. That's right, yeah, I'm coming for you, Netflix. So so that's going to be going on. But yeah, I've got too many cameras anyway, as you might be able to deduce from my videos. So there we go. 2 cameras separated by 50 years. One bought for £90, one I'm probably going to sell soon for £2,500. One, you know, sort of quite technically okay, but not many gadgets and bells and whistles, a few little bells and whistles. But long or the short of it, you know, most of the award-winning work I've made, the work that was in National Geographic Magazine, the work that was in Ikonta England was made with this little camera. It wasn't the best camera by far. There were certainly better cameras out there, but it was the camera that I had, and I practiced with it, and I worked with it, and I kind of grinded with it. And I managed to find a way to make it work for me. And I think that's the truth. You've got a camera right now, it's the camera for you. You just got to grind with it a bit more. You've got to get used to that camera until it feels like an extension of you. And you're not even thinking about it anymore, you're just shooting with it. So ignore all the YouTube videos of people waving Leicas at you. Don't fall into that trap. Don't let them make you think you need a Leica because you don't have the money or whatever. Forget all that. Whatever you've got is what you need, and you've got it already. So there you go. Please like, please subscribe. I won't be doing any more kit videos for a very long time. I'm gonna sell this camera. I thought I should just compare it to this little bad boy, just because in my heart I knew this is it, this is the one. So there you go, thank you.